Hey, what's up guys? It's Alex Espinoza with the Ricky Henderson to YouTube. Make sure to use the code RickyBlog for 10% off your next order at lastdivebar.com. Guys have been pumping out a whole bunch of crazy stuff. There's a lot of emotions. Brian said the sticker needs to get bigger, so yeah. There we go, baby. But yeah, so, I've been doing a lot of research lately on, there's just been so much A's stuff happening. And, we're all under the impression that this is our last time to see the A's at the Coliseum. There's only 6 games left, one more homestand, but the more information that's getting out there, the less that we know. So, in essence, this whole Ricky Report's just going to be about Sacramento. There's other stuff going on in Vegas, and Wally Haas just had a great interview with John Shea. I'll try to cover those on a Ricky Report, but for now, we're just talking Sacramento for this one, all right? So I know basically since I started this channel, especially the past couple of years, I've been super critical of John Fisher and the A's and their ability to get the stadium done in Vegas. And I was thinking about it. It's like not just this deal in Vegas, it's like literally half my life. So I'm 37. So for like the past 18 years, Fisher and his cronies have been trying to figure out a stadium, and it hasn't happened yet. So that's why, I'm just so skeptical, and all this news is happening, and I'm just like, oh, here we go again. I've been here before, So it's worth reminding that, they've already gone out. They already struck out like 5 times, So first of all was Fremont. Second of all was San Jose. Then was the Laney College site in Oakland. They couldn't make the Coliseum site work, despite owning it, half of it for the past 5 years. And then Howard Terminal, of course. So that's why I'm so skeptical when Fisher's, trying to get this plan done in Vegas, is because they haven't been able to make it work otherwise. So most recently, it sounds like their planning for Sacramento is also half-baked. So big surprise, So John Fisher's bringing that same energy to Sacramento. And remember, like even at the beginning of the season, like the first, couple series, we didn't know where the A's were going to be playing as far as next year. So on April 4th, the A's held a hastily scheduled press conference. They announced it at 7:45 in the morning, and then at 10:30 in the morning they announced, hey, we're coming to Sacramento. And this was after the city of Oakland reportedly made a 5-year, $97 million lease offer to the A's that they scoffed at and were just like, no way. And then the city of Oakland supposedly reduced it to 3 years, $60 million, but the A's said no, so they just left their Coliseum lease, and that's why we are where we are today. So lately, super agent Scott Boras has kind of been taking aim at Sacramento and the A's plans up there. And at first, it was a conversation he had with Susan Slusser last week for an article that came out in the Chronicle. And the Chronicle's really been killing it with their reporting lately on this situation, basically all summer. Slusser and John Shea, and even their intern Charlotte Varnes, they've been doing great reporting just on this whole situation and how it's just kind of falling apart at the seams, So the latest, it was this headline from the Chronicle, well, not the latest, but this one article came from Slusser with the following headline: MLB players and agents wrap their heads around the A's playing in Sacramento. Quote, it's going to suck. So she actually started off the story with a funny anecdote about how a AAA Rivercats player was in the weight room and all of a sudden a drill bit came through the wall because, they're putting in an extension to that left field clubhouse to make it MLB viable. And supposedly they were doing it while the players were working out, They don't got much time to do this stuff. So the Rivercats had to supposedly file something to try to get the construction to stop so they could actually work out. So that was kind of a funny little thing. And, actually just last week, the A's AAA affiliate, the Las Vegas Aviators, were there. I wish I went, but I don't have a car, but I would need to try to get up there somehow. And then hopefully at the end of the month, I can get there for their last homestand. Because I kind of just want to see it for my own eyes, too. Because supposedly, I think they're going to build like a home clubhouse near home plate, and the visiting clubhouse is going to be out in the left field. So I kind of just want to see what it looks like. I want to see if these clubs too that the A's are talking about, and just kind of get a lay of the land up there at Sutter Health Park. It's been a long time since I've been up there. But anyways, so in this article from Susan, there's a lot of interesting comments from players and agents, including Scott Boras. He's from Elk Grove, so he knows the area. He wants to see baseball succeed up there, but he's pretty skeptical. He's been pretty skeptical about this whole time, about this whole process with the A's and leaving Oakland prematurely and stuff. But, he was really vocal about the heat being an issue on the turf and how it's imperative to protect the health of these multi-gajillionaire, millionaire athletes, So this is the first time we've seen Boras really take aim in Sacramento and talk about this. And then a Giants pitcher named Sean Jelly, who's been there in Sacramento the past 3 or 4 years off and on while pitching for the River Cats and the Giants. This is what he had to say. He said, quote, "It's going to suck when it's 100 to 115 degrees in June. That's all there is to it." So, yep, I mean, artificial turf on there, it's pretty brutal, you know? So, and remember that just last month, I think in July, or a couple months ago, Charlotte Barnes, the intern for the Chronicle, was going around the A's clubhouse seeing what they thought about playing on turf. And for a lot of them, they didn't know. Like Lawrence Butler didn't even know he's playing on turf next year, you know? So, so I think the most interesting thing in this article on the Chronicle, too, is that the idea of the A's coming back to the Coliseum is at least getting kicked around by the agents and brought up by the agents. So remember, the A's and Mayor Sheng Tao didn't have the greatest relationship at the negotiating table. And this is what Boras said. Now that AESCG is in the process of buying the Coliseum site, this is what Boras said. He said, "Have they thought about re-examining this? Maybe a new group will alter things, get things back to reality, because this doesn't make sense." And then another Bay Area-based agent named Paul Cobb had this to say. He said, "I think the stakeholders may be changing, and they are certainly softening. They can't figure out something for a year or two. I mean, the only other possibility for Major League facilities is to play all their game on the road." So again, I think this is interesting, just kind of noticing that Scott Boras, his words do hold weight in this game, and he is, he's taking aim, he's taking notice of this thing, and there hasn't even been a game played there yet, so we'll see how it is next summer when it actually gets hot. So, this kind of thinking actually jives with something that Casey Pratt said recently. He was on the Oakland 68s podcast. Super cool to see the 68s launching their own podcast. I'm glad to help them out with that as producer Alex helping out Jorge Leon and Anson Casanares. They had Casey on earlier this week. And this is what Casey was saying. He's like, "Don't call me crazy, but the Coliseum might still be an option for the A's."
It's an untenable situation. The commissioner at some point will have to step in. You saw just the other day, Scott Boras, the biggest agent in all of baseball, calling this into question. I don't know where the MLB Players Union is at on this. I cannot believe they're not making a bigger stink. You're seeing players now realizing what the situation is going to be out there. They can put in all the upgrades they want. It's not going to change the fact that that's not going to be a tenable situation for Major League Baseball. And I think when people realize the situation, there are going to be conversations about where they go until and if Vegas is ready. And I'd like to hope that Oakland would be ready to step up to the plate if that happened again. And maybe ASCG at that point owns both halves of the Coliseum site. We know that they've just made a deal with the A's to buy their half. They worked well with them in that sale agreement. Who knows? I don't think it's over yet. I'm not crazy, I'm telling you. But I just don't think Sacramento, a minor league park on artificial turf, is going to work.
So it's worth remembering just kind of the history of the Coliseum. It was a city and county split thing up until about 2018 or 19, and the A's bought the county's half. So it was the A's and the city, but now ASCG is buying both halves. So instead of the A's having to negotiate with the city of Oakland, where there's a lot of bad blood at the negotiating table, now ASCG is there. So that's why people are saying, this might be an option, So ASCG has already started paying its $105 million contract to the city, which was announced last week. And reportedly they are finalizing their agreement with the A's for $125 million, but there's a deal in place. So again, Casey's saying that ASCG and the A's have a good relationship, and maybe they can cut the A's a better deal than the $20 million that they were getting. So, but again, the A's are a pretty emotional bunch, So I think their decision to go to Sacramento last year was, maybe they were kind of half-baked and they just scoffed at the Oakland's offer. They said, this is never going to happen. We just got to get out of here, got to go to Sacramento. And it's worth remembering last year, too, when they made their binding land deal agreement in Vegas. It was just 10 days after the first reverse boycott idea was getting kicked around Twitter. So I think they wanted to stifle that thing. So I think the A's are kind of getting their foot in their mouth here, and a few months later, and they're still trying to figure this out. As far as next year, the Oakland Roots do have a signed agreement to play at the Coliseum. They're trying to get the Soul in there. As far as I know, that's not finalized yet. But the Coliseum does have a tenant next year. But the Roots is only 17 games a year. If ASCG had a chance to bring in a tenant for 81 games a year, obviously I think they would. But we would have to see Sacramento fall apart first, you know? But all of this is kind of hopium. It's kind of a mind, it's messing with my mind. I don't know. I had completely given up the idea of the Coliseum, but now this is all coming out. I feel kind of crazy, to be honest, but I don't know. Who knows? But all we know for sure is that the Roots are going to be there next year. And speaking of the Roots, today, Thursday, September 12th, they opened up a second community investment round. Last time they raised over $3.2 million from like 5,400 people. So if you want to get a part of the Roots, time to get a part of the Roots, round 2. But that wasn't it from Scott Boras. So that conversation he had with Susan Slusser from the Chronicle was just one of recent media appearances that he made. He also spoke with KFBK Business Radio in Sacramento. They've honestly been pretty on top of this stuff, covering it pretty closely. The business of the A's coming to Sacramento. Last week they had the West Sacramento mayor on there, Martha Guerrero, making her public plea to keep the A's, but. On Thursday morning, they shared an exclusive interview with Boras, and he really kind of went after it again, and laid out how he thinks about it. And it's worth remembering that Boras is from Elk Grove, the Sacramento suburb, and he brought up some salient points. First of all, the temperature, which of course he mentioned to Slusser, but this is what he had to say about it.
We have no major league fields that are AstroTurf that are outdoors. They're all indoors. We're talking about players with millions and millions of dollars of asset value to teams and to themselves. The other thing is the facilities have to have massive indoor rooms so that players can work out, players can do all their pregame and proper environments and all those things. And when you're having a shared facility where you're having multiple teams playing in one space, all those things are unknowns.
So again, he brings up the money, brings up the temperature, and the fact that they need big league facilities. And it's worth noting that Boras reportedly represents A's players like Zach Geloff, Shea Langoliers, J.J. Bleday, but also some of the biggest names in the game like, Juan Soto, Bryce Harper, Pete Alonso. And I think Soto and Alonso are both free agents, so it doesn't sound like they'll be signing with Sacramento this offseason. Dang, that's too bad. But in the AL West, he's got Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Max Scherzer in Texas. He's got Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman in Houston, just to name a few people. So, and like he told Slusser, Boras also thinks AESEG might change the equation in Oakland. But I do think it's interesting that he mentioned the TV deal here, because I have a source with NBC Sports, and they're telling me that the TV deal stays the same because the A's are still going to be on NBC Sports California, and the footprint, they're going to reach the same amount of homes no matter if they're in Sacramento or Oakland, because NBC Sports California right now, they have the A's, San Jose Sharks, and the Sacramento Kings, and NBC Bay Area is kind of taking all those San Francisco teams. So the A's will still be on NBC Sports California. It's just like Sacramento, so it'll still be the same footprint, same DMA. But here's what Boras had to say.
There's a new party that owns the Coliseum that is now ready and willing to negotiate with the A's that wasn't before.
Do you think the A's listen to him?
They have to, because they get their full TV rights and maybe a better deal on that stadium. It depends a lot on the contract agreement and what the commissioner's authority would be. But I think the Oakland A's are now going to get a great deal from the Coliseum ownership group, where they would certainly want the team there. They have their offices there. Everything works for them.
And this is a developing story because basically 10-15 minutes right before I recorded this video initially, Evan Drellich of The Athletic came out with another tweet saying, with a statement from Major League Baseball. He said, "It is a certainty that the A's will play their 2025 season in Sacramento as planned. MLB is continuing to work productively with the MLBPA on details of the transition." So I think there's a couple interesting things here. First of all, that they felt compelled to, put out a statement. This is definitely on their radar. I think Boras is, his comments recently to the Chronicle and KFBK are really, kind of putting the spotlight on Sacramento here finally for the first time on a bigger scale. And then there's no mention of 2026, 2027, 2028. Of course, right now the plan is that the A's will be there for 3 seasons with the option for a 4th year, but we'll see what happens. So it looks like the new conversation we might be having is, are the A's going to come back to the Coliseum in 2026? So stay tuned. But I just really can't imagine at all what it would be like if the A's came back to Oakland. I mean, the past few weeks, a lot of fans have been making like their final voyages, saying their goodbyes to the Coliseum. That's why I wore this shirt out today. Shout out to Last Eye Bar. Get this at Last Eye Bar. But like, you know, people have been coming to say their goodbyes. They issued layoff letters to 600 employees. They said goodbye to Vince Cotroneo. They're a radio guy. They didn't bring him back. They were saying goodbye to NBC Sports California. By proxy of the A's is saying goodbye to Brody Brazil. They put out this pin, this 1968 to 2024 Coliseum pin. They've been doing this graphic and all these. They even put a "Thank You Oakland" billboard. It's really bizarre because I had just completely given up on the idea of the Coliseum, and now this is like, oh wait, maybe this is still a thing. So, but even if the A's do come back in 2026, it's going to be like so weird, because it'll be like this weird limbo of I don't know. It would just be so weird. I think the only way it would work is if Fisher sold a team and that re-energized the fan base, like you saw with the Commanders. When Daniel Snyder sold the team, they sold out all their luxury suites and everybody's stoked to be a Commanders fan again. Like, I think that's the only way, because at this point the Bees have got a lot of momentum and are starting to cannibalize the A's fan base. I heard Anson on the 68's podcast say, if the A's come back, I'd still be going to Bees games, So, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who are loyal to the Bees now because the Bees are loyal to Oakland, and people would know the A's are just kind of a stopover again. Like, I don't know. There's so much damage done here in Oakland. Like, it would be so messy and weird, but hey, we will see what happens. But wait, there's more drama from Sacramento. Because earlier this week, Jason Burke of Sports Illustrated reached out to the A's, who confirmed that there are no assurances that playoff games will be held in Sacramento. So before you laugh at that and say, wait, dude, there's no way that the A's play a playoff game in Sacramento, I beg to differ, because they've really turned into a legit team in July, since July 1st. The past 60 games, in that time, they have 34-26 record, which would put them at a 92-win pace for the season and, make them a playoff team this year. So, obviously, that's extrapolating 60 games to 162, but their offense is crazy. They don't have, any big names on the pitching staff, but these dudes are making it happen, and they're beating, they're a legit team. They're like a good, entertaining team to watch, and they're fun, and like they're good, and they're winning games, So here is a statement that the A's gave to Jason Burke. Shout out to Jason for reporting on this. The A's said home postseason games are not guaranteed to be played at Sutter Health Park. In the event a home postseason game occurs at an alternate location, A's season ticket holders will have priority purchase access for tickets. I mean, who knows what will happen? Obviously, if there's a playoff game, I think everybody would want it to be at a big stadium, but obviously, there's a lot of drawbacks if you're an A's player in this situation. So, this is just another weird wrinkle to the whole situation. Just kind of points that the A's left prematurely to Oakland instead of really thinking this whole thing through. Carmichael Dave, the longtime radio host up in Sacramento, he sent out this tweet. He said, in an incredibly interesting footnote, I spoke to 2 different people who bought premium season tickets. They were not informed of this possibility, and both are livid.
I just got to know. Did they tell you that when they had you sign a 3-year with an option for a 4-year deal to buy these tickets? Was that part of your conversation? Now, again, this is anecdotally, so I want to be careful here, because if it comes back, maybe my friend was dumb, but I talked to 2 different people that had bought season tickets. They both said they weren't informed. And he's livid, and he probably should be. And I'm not entirely sure that doesn't become a bigger deal.
Yeah, like the legality of that.
100%. Now, again, I don't want to get over my skis. Sure. I don't want to get over my skis here. I'll leave that to all. But at the very least, minimally, that is a terrible look. Not only is this team not going to have Sacramento anywhere near the jersey, but now they're saying, oh, my God, if we have a phenomenal season, we make the postseason.
So again, the A's are doing their fans dirty, asking for tens of thousands of dollars of investment and not even telling them the full scope of, the full scope of the thing. Like, you kind of just think about the options, what would it be? Would it be the Giant Stadium? Would they have to go back to the Coliseum? Would they go to the middle of the country, like go to Texas, like they did during 2020 when they had the playoffs out there, or Dodger Stadium, something like that? You know, what do you like? What are your options? Or like, say they play the Yankees in a 5-game series, would the Yankees get all 5 games and the A's would just be a home team? Like it just shits on the whole tradition, and you know, it's just the whole game is getting compromised by this, you know, just because John Fisher wants a little more money, you know, and it always comes down to money. And Evan Drellich of The Athletic, he reported that a bigger stadium probably means bigger playoff bonuses for players. So in the end, everybody could be aligned that they need to go to a major league park. This is what he said. He said, all 3 of the league, the team, and the players could wind up aligned on playing an A's postseason somewhere larger than Sacramento. Attendance obviously affects what the MLB A's would take in, but in playoffs, it directly affects the player pool too. So again, always comes down to money. But yeah, I mean, just think if you were an A's player, like next year they make the playoffs, and then you have to play like 5 games, you know, basically 5 road games or neutral games where you're not going to have much support. Even if they went down to the Giants, it just wouldn't, you know, how many people are, you know, 20, 30,000 people going to come down from Sacramento to make that drive? Like, it just won't be the same, you know? And obviously if they're in Texas or if they're on the road, that'll suck for them too. So, you know, this isn't why players got into this, you know? They didn't get into the big leagues to play the AAA thing. So it's all just a cluster. And it makes me think, you know, what does Vivek Ranadive think about all of this? Vivek, of course, is the owner of the Kings and the owner of the River Cats, who helps facilitate his whole thing. Here's a picture of him, Sandy Dean, and John Fisher at courtside at a Kings game last year. And I honestly wonder if Vivek is hating the fact that he got into bed and did business with his friend John Fisher, or if he's loving it because it makes Fisher just look like an idiot and he's just waiting there to grab the bag. So, you know, and I wonder if he's starting to get on the phone with his investor buddies like, hey, get the checkbooks ready. You know, I don't know, because it is worth noting that last year he was in the running. He was a finalist, I believe one of 7 or 8 finalists of ownership groups in the running for the Ottawa Senators, who eventually got sold for $950 million. And then while I was researching that, the Ottawa Sun, Bruce Garriock, also reported that Vivek was part of an investment group that was pursuing Chelsea last year, and they sold for $3.2 billion. So it appears that Vivek wants to add to his portfolio, which I think is notable. In the past few months, Vivek's been getting a lot of hate from A's fans who, you know, they're angry that he's harboring John Fisher in the middle of this storm, but this is what I think Vivek is thinking, you know? You know, this is just, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm not saying it's correct, but if I'm Vivek, this is, maybe I'm thinking this, you know? He's doing right by Sacramento by getting MLB product up to Sacramento, even if it's temporarily, you know, he's bringing big league baseball to Sacramento. So that's cool after saving the Kings. Like, he probably thinks, all right, I'm the man in Sacramento. I got 2 big league sports up here. And then he's doing right by the A's by giving Fisher some breathing room to figure out some stuff, whether you agree with it or not. All right, so he's doing right by the A's. He's doing right by the Giants by getting the A's out of Oakland, so I'm sure they're happy with that. And therefore, he's doing right by MLB. He's helping out 2 of the clubs. MLB has been very adamant about getting the A's out of Oakland. All right, so he's helping them there. So he's helping out the A's, Giants, MLB. He's helping out the River Cats because he's getting upgraded facilities that he's not paying for. And you know, I think I saw some, you know, tweets of people saying, oh, the A's are going to be rent-free in Sacramento. But it's also worth noting that Carmichael Dave in July, he reported that Vivek and the River Cats are actually going to get a cut of concessions or revenue. So they are getting some money from the A's. So he gets passive, you know, net income. When his team's on the road, the River Cats is on the road, he's going to be getting big league paychecks. So I'm sure he's loving it, you know. He doesn't have to do anything. He's getting upgraded facilities, getting free revenue. So the only negatives I can really see is he maybe cannibalizing his own River Cats fans. I believe they're, but you know, but the positive of getting MLB money is probably outweighing that, because I think last season it was like around $3,000 or $4,000, like it was a few $1,000s for River Cats front row seats, and now they're charging upwards of $30,000 for a front row seat. So he's like, yeah, I'll take the MLB checks, you know, like he's, you know, why wouldn't he want to do that? Obviously, there's going to be some logistical challenges. His players might not be able to rehab there when the team's on the road. And his staff is probably going to be working double time or overtime. So those people will probably get screwed. But in the end, I think the positives of this kind of outweigh it for Vivek so long as he can weather the PR storm of being like a hypocrite of, harboring Fisher here. So, and I think he's putting himself in position if MLB does want to expand to Sacramento, he can be the point man for that. So, and as we highlighted last week, there's reports that it's, 15 to 20K a year for premium seats, and you have to commit to the whole term of the A's thing, which is ridiculous. And recently on Reddit, again, this is only Reddit, so you don't know if it's true or if just somebody trying to stir shit up or whatever, but at least one Reddit user said that he was being asked to lock in tickets at 16 to 23K a year for 3 seasons. So that's crazy. It's like, anywhere between $48,000 and $69,000 for these tickets, and it just makes me think, like, damn, do the A's need this money to make Vegas happen, or are they just looking at this as a revenue stream for Vegas? Like, what is going on here? Because I don't know, and it's not like, they could be good next year, but they literally don't have a single player signed to a contract next year beyond arbitration. This is what Jason Burke tweeted out, and it sounds like the Vegas can might be getting kicked down the road too, which is. Steve Hill just recently came out and said that, we don't have to get the agreements done by December. If we combine the lease and the development agreement, we can push them to May. So this whole thing is just a joke and a sham. I think Vegas is a scam. Sacramento is a sham. Most teams wait till their new stadium is built before moving. But here are the A's who... They don't even have their financing and their plan in Vegas done yet, and they're already declaring they're going to go there. In the end, I just think John Fisher really needs to sell the team because this whole thing is ridiculous. Maybe he's going to make it work. Maybe he'll get the financing in order. Maybe Sacramento will go swimmingly next year. But right now, it seems like everything is half-baked, and it's ridiculous that it got this far. But as always, thanks a lot for listening. I'm Alex Espinoza. Use the code RickyBlog at lasthour.com. Thanks.